Hello and welcome. Today, we are not here to rush, not here to impress, not here to consume fast content. Today, we are here to slow down and think. This video is not about motivation, not about success, not about quick happiness tips. It is about something deeper. It is about happiness, what it really is, and why so many people chase it but rarely feel it. We live in a world that tells us to do more, to be more, to want more. And yet many people feel tired, confused, and empty. So the question is not, how can I get more? The real question is, am I moving in the right direction? This talk is based on ideas about responsibility, meaning, choice, and inner clarity. But don't worry, this is not theory. This is about real life, your life. I want you to listen not as a student, not as someone who must agree. Listen as a human being listening to himself. If something feels uncomfortable, that's okay. Growth is often quiet and slightly uncomfortable. You don't need to remember everything. You don't need to change everything today. Just stay present. Because happiness is not something you find one day. It is something you build slowly, honestly, and consciously. So take a breath. Put the phone down if you can. And let's begin this conversation about what really matters. Part 1. Happiness is not what you think it is. Today, let's talk about happiness in a very honest way. Not the way it is usually shown to us. Not the way it is sold to us. But the way it really works. Most people think happiness is something that happens later. Later in life, later after success, later after money, status, or recognition. This idea is very dangerous because it teaches you to postpone life. You wake up every day thinking, this is not it yet. I just need to survive this period. When things get better, then I will live. And slowly, years pass. Not because life is cruel, but because attention is misplaced. Happiness does not live in the future. It never did. The future is only a direction, not a place you arrive at. Real happiness lives in the way you move. Let's look at a simple truth. If happiness were a result, then every successful person would be happy. But we know this is not true. There are rich people who feel empty. There are famous people who feel lost. There are powerful people who feel tired of life. And at the same time, there are people with very simple lives who feel calm, stable, and fulfilled. So the question is not, how much do you have? The real question is, how do you live with what you have? Happiness begins when your life stops being borrowed, not copied, not built on expectations. From childhood, many of us are taught what success should look like. Good grades, a good job, a good image, approval from others. But very few people are taught to ask themselves a simple question, is this my life? When you don't ask this question, you can live for years doing the right things and still feel that something is wrong. That feeling is not weakness. It is your inner compass. And happiness starts when you stop ignoring it. Here is something important to understand. Happiness is not excitement. It is not constant joy. It is not smiling all the time. Happiness is inner agreement. Agreement between who you are and how you live. When there is disagreement inside you, even good things feel heavy. You can have comfort and still feel tension. You can have stability and still feel emptiness. Why? Because happiness requires alignment. Many people are unhappy not because life is hard, but because they live in conflict with themselves. They say yes when they want to say no. They stay silent when they want to speak. They chase things they do not truly want. Every small betrayal of yourself takes energy. And over time, that loss of energy becomes exhaustion. Happiness does not disappear suddenly. It leaks out slowly. There is another uncomfortable truth. Happiness demands responsibility, not control over everything, but ownership of your choices. The moment you say, "My life is this way because of others," you give your power away. Yes, circumstances exist. Yes, life is not always fair. But happiness does not grow in blaming. It grows in awareness. When you understand what is in your control and what is not, and you focus only on the first, a person who takes responsibility does not complain less. They suffer less, because suffering increases when you feel powerless. Responsibility gives you direction, and direction gives meaning. Here's where many people get confused. They think happiness means comfort, but comfort without meaning creates weakness. If your only goal is to feel good, you become afraid of anything difficult. But a life without difficulty is not a strong life. It is a fragile one. Happiness grows when you know why you tolerate discomfort. When effort has meaning, it does not destroy you, it strengthens you. Meaning is the foundation of happiness, not pleasure, not entertainment, not distraction. Meaning comes from contribution, from growth, from becoming someone you respect. That is why easy pleasures never satisfy for long. They calm you for a moment and then leave emptiness behind. Meaning fills you from the inside. This is why happiness is not found in avoiding problems. It is found in choosing which problems are worth facing. Every meaningful life includes difficulty, but not every difficult life has meaning. Happiness appears when difficulty serves growth. So before we talk about goals, money, success, or habits, we must understand this. Happiness is not something you get. It is something you build by the way you live each day. And it starts with honesty. Honesty with yourself about what matters, about what does not, about what kind of life you are actually living. Part 2. Responsibility, choice, and the quiet weight of freedom. When we talk about happiness, we cannot avoid one difficult topic: responsibility. Not the kind that feels like pressure, not the kind that feels like blame, but the kind that quietly shapes your entire life. Most people want freedom, but very few people want responsibility. Because responsibility means you can no longer hide. You can no longer say, "This is just how life is. This is how everyone lives. I had no choice." Responsibility asks a simple question: what part of this is mine? And that question changes everything. Many people live as if life is happening to them. They react, they adapt, they survive, but they do not choose. And when you don't choose your life chooses for you. This is where unhappiness begins. Not in failure, not in difficulty, but in unconscious living. Taking responsibility does not mean you control everything. It means you control your response. You control where you put your attention. You control what you tolerate. You control what you walk away from. These choices may seem small, but they are not. They decide the direction of your life. Here's something most people never realize. Every time you say yes to something, you say no to something else. Every hour spent on distraction is an hour not spent on growth. Every time you avoid a difficult conversation, you choose short-term comfort over long-term clarity. Responsibility means seeing these trades clearly and accepting them. Many people say they want happiness, but what they really want is comfort without cost. They want peace without change, growth without effort, freedom without risk. But life does not work this way. Every meaningful life demands sacrifice. The question is not, will I sacrifice something? The question is, what am I willing to sacrifice? And for what? This is where choice becomes important. Choice is not just a moment. It is a habit. You choose how you start your day. You choose how you speak to yourself. You choose what you consume: information, conversations, emotions. Over time, these small choices become your character, and your character becomes your destiny. Many people are unhappy because they live in constant reaction. They react to news. They react to other people's opinions. They react to fear. Reaction feels safe because it removes responsibility. If this happened, what could I do? They made me feel this way. This is just how things are. But reaction slowly destroys your sense of self, because when you only react, you are never the author of your life. Choice is uncomfortable at first. It requires thinking. It requires honesty. It requires slowing down. And slowing down is scary in a world that constantly rushes. But without slowing down, you cannot see clearly, and without clarity, there is no real happiness. Freedom is often misunderstood. People think freedom means doing whatever you want, but real freedom is much quieter. Freedom means you're not controlled by impulses, not controlled by fear, not controlled by other people's expectations. Freedom means you can pause, you can think, you can choose. This is why freedom feels heavy to many people, because freedom removes excuses. When you are free, you cannot blame your parents forever. You cannot blame society forever. You cannot blame circumstances forever. At some point, you must look at your life and say, this is where I am, and this is my responsibility now. This moment is uncomfortable, but it is also powerful, because it is the moment you stop being a victim and start being a participant. Happiness grows when you accept this responsibility without anger, not with self-attack, not with guilt, but with calm acceptance. I may not like everything about my life, but I accept that this is my starting point. From here, change becomes possible. Another important truth: you cannot build happiness on lies, not lies to others, lies to yourself. When you pretend you are fine while feeling empty, your inner world splits. When you pretend you want something just because it looks good, your energy disappears. Responsibility means being honest about what you actually want, even if it scares you, even if it doesn't sound impressive. Many people follow paths that look successful but feel wrong, and they ignore that feeling for years, until one day their body becomes tired, their mind becomes anxious, and their soul becomes silent. Happiness requires listening earlier, listening before burnout, before resentment, before collapse. Choice also means limits. You cannot do everything. You cannot be everywhere. You cannot live every possible life. Trying to do so creates constant dissatisfaction. Happiness grows when you choose one direction and let go of others, not because they are bad, but because they are not yours. Letting go is not failure. It is focus. There is deep peace in choosing a path and accepting its limits. When you stop asking, what if I chose differently, and start asking, how can I grow where I am? This shift changes your inner world. Responsibility also changes how you see mistakes. Mistakes stop being proof of failure. They become feedback. When you take responsibility, you don't waste energy on shame. You learn, you adjust, you continue. This creates resilience, and resilience is one of the strongest sources of happiness. Happiness does not come from always feeling good. It comes from knowing you can handle what comes, from trusting yourself to face life honestly, from knowing that Even if things break, you can rebuild. This trust is priceless. So happiness is not lightness all the time. It is stability, not emotional highs, but inner grounding, not constant excitement, but quiet confidence. And this confidence grows when you live responsibly, choose consciously, and accept the weight of freedom. Part 3. Happiness, Fear, and Living Without Losing Yourself. There is one thing that silently controls many lives: fear. Not loud fear, not panic, but quiet fear. The kind that whispers, "Don't risk too much. Don't stand out. Don't slow down. You might fall behind." This fear does not stop people from living. It shapes how they live. And often, it moves them away from happiness without them even noticing. Many people think happiness disappears because life becomes difficult. But often, happiness disappears because people stop being honest with themselves. They choose safety over truth, approval over authenticity, busy movement over meaningful direction, and fear is always nearby, quietly guiding these choices. Fear is not the enemy. Fear is information. But when fear becomes the driver, life becomes smaller. You start choosing what feels acceptable, not what feels right. You start building a life that looks stable from the outside, but feels empty on the inside. One of the biggest fears people have is the fear of slowing down. They believe that if they stop, everything will collapse: their value, their progress, their future. But constant movement is not the same as growth. Sometimes constant movement is avoidance, avoiding difficult questions, avoiding silence, avoiding the feeling of, "Is this really my life?" Happiness requires courage, not dramatic courage, quiet courage, the courage to pause, the courage to feel discomfort, the courage to admit that something is no longer working. This courage does not make life easier immediately, but it makes life real. And real life, even when imperfect, feels better than a perfect illusion. Many people confuse success with happiness. They chase goals, numbers, status, money, believing happiness will appear at the finish line. But happiness is not a reward for suffering long enough. Happiness is the quality of how you live now. Not after you achieve something, not when everything is fixed. Now, this does not mean ambition is bad. Ambition without awareness is the problem. When ambition is driven by fear, it becomes endless. No amount of achievement is enough. No level of success brings peace. Because the goal was never growth. It was escape. Escape from insecurity. Escape from comparison. Escape from feeling not enough. Happiness changes when you stop using achievement to prove your worth. When you stop asking, "How do I look?" and start asking, "How do I feel living this way?" This question is uncomfortable, but it is honest, and honesty is the foundation of happiness. Another difficult truth: you cannot build happiness by copying someone else's life, even if their life looks perfect, even if their path seems safe. Your nervous system knows when something is wrong for you. And when you ignore that signal, stress appears, then fatigue, then emptiness. Happiness requires alignment between your values, your actions, and your inner truth. Fear often tells you to postpone happiness. First achieve more. First fix everything. First become someone else. But happiness is not a future version of you. It is a relationship with the present moment. You don't need a different life to practice presence. You need attention. Attention is where happiness lives. When your attention is scattered, your mind feels restless. When your attention is focused, your life feels grounded. You start noticing simple things again. A quiet morning, a deep breath, a meaningful conversation. These moments do not look impressive, but they feel alive. Fear wants speed. Happiness wants depth. Speed gives the illusion of progress. Depth creates real fulfillment. When you slow down enough to actually experience your life, something shifts. You stop living toward happiness and start living from it. This does not mean life becomes perfect. Problems still exist. Uncertainty still exists. But your relationship with them changes. You stop fighting reality. You start working with it, and this reduces suffering. One of the clearest signs that you are moving toward happiness is inner quiet, not silence of thoughts, but silence of conflict. You are no longer at war with yourself. You are not constantly asking, should I be doing more? Am I enough? Am I late? You simply do what needs to be done with attention. Happiness is deeply connected to self-trust. When you trust yourself, you don't need constant validation. You don't need to rush. You don't need to compare. You know that your pace is your pace, and that is enough. Fear tells you to control everything. Happiness grows when you accept uncertainty, not passively, but calmly. You do your part. You show up. You choose consciously, and then you let life respond. This balance between action and acceptance creates inner stability. Real happiness is not excitement. It is ease. Ease with who you are, ease with where you are, ease with becoming. This ease does not come from comfort. It comes from honesty. And here is one final truth for this part. Happiness is not found by escaping fear. It is found by not letting fear decide your life. Fear can sit in the room, but it does not get the steering wheel. You choose again and again. Part 4. Money, Meaning, and Living Without Losing Your Soul. Money is one of the most misunderstood topics when we talk about happiness. Some people believe money will make them happy. Others believe money destroys happiness. Both views are incomplete. Money itself is neutral. It only amplifies who you already are and how you already live. Many people suffer not because they lack money, but because they attach their entire sense of worth to it. They measure themselves by income. They measure others by status. They measure life by numbers, and slowly, meaning disappears. Money becomes dangerous when it replaces values. When people don't ask, why do I need this? But only ask, how can I get more? More without direction does not create freedom. It creates pressure. True happiness is not about rejecting money. It is about understanding its role. Money is a tool, not a goal, not an identity. When money becomes the goal, life becomes transactional. Everything turns into exchange, time for money, energy for approval, values for security. But when money is a tool, it supports life instead of consuming it. You earn, you use, you invest. But you don't lose yourself in the process. One of the biggest lies people believe is that happiness starts after financial success. They say, first I will earn enough, then I will relax, then I will live. But then never comes, because desires grow, standards rise, comparison never ends. This does not mean you should stop striving. It means you should stop postponing life. You don't pause your humanity until you reach a number. You live now while building. Meaning is what protects happiness in the material world. Meaning answers a simple question. What is this for? Why do you work? Why do you earn? Why do you want more? Without an answer, money creates emptiness. With an answer, money creates possibilities. Meaning is deeply personal. It cannot be copied. It cannot be borrowed. What gives one person energy may drain another, and that is normal. Happiness does not require the same path for everyone. Some people find meaning in building businesses, some in teaching, some in creating, some in caring for others. The problem begins when people chase someone else's definition of success. They win races they never wanted to run. A meaningful life does not always look impressive, but it feels aligned. You wake up tired sometimes, but not empty. You face difficulties, but not inner conflict. Money without meaning creates anxiety. Meaning without money creates limitation. Balance creates stability. And balance begins with self-awareness. Ask yourself honestly, does my work support my life or consume it? Does my income give me freedom or only responsibilities? Does my lifestyle reflect my values or my fears? These questions are uncomfortable, but they bring clarity. Another important truth: money often shows where fear still lives. Fear of not being enough, fear of being dependent, fear of losing control. When fear drives financial decisions, people overwork, oversave, or overspend. None of these bring peace. Peace comes from sufficiency. Not I have everything, but I have enough. Enough to live, enough to breathe, enough to choose. This feeling of enough is the foundation of happiness. People who never feel enough are always tense. They are never fully present. They are always preparing for disaster or chasing the next level. Life becomes survival, even in comfort. Happiness grows when you redefine wealth. Wealth is not only money, it is time. It is health. It is mental clarity. It is relationships. It is inner calm. If money destroys these, it is too expensive. A truly successful life is one where money supports freedom, not replaces it. Freedom to choose your pace. Freedom to say no. Freedom to rest without guilt. This freedom cannot be bought directly. It is built through boundaries and awareness. Meaning also changes how you experience work. Work becomes contribution, not punishment. Effort becomes expression, not sacrifice. You stop asking, how much can I get? And start asking, how can I create value? This shift changes everything. People who work with meaning still get tired, but they recover faster because they know why they are doing what they do. Purpose reduces burnout. And here is a subtle but powerful insight. Happiness is not about having less money. It is about needing less validation. When you stop proving yourself, pressure dissolves. You don't need to impress. You don't need to compete. You simply live according to your inner compass. Money then becomes quiet. It does not dominate your thoughts. It does not define your mood. It becomes what it was meant to be, a tool that serves life. This part is not about rejecting ambition. It is about grounding ambition in meaning. So you grow without losing your soul. Part 5, responsibility, choice, and the quiet shape of a happy life. At some point in life, every person faces the same silent question, not out loud, not dramatic, but honest. Who is responsible for my life? Most people try to avoid this question because the answer is heavy. It is easier to believe that happiness depends on circumstances, on childhood, on the country, on the economy, on other people. And yes, these things matter. But they are not the center. The core of happiness is responsibility. Not responsibility as pressure, not as guilt, not as punishment, but responsibility as ownership. My life belongs to me. This idea can feel scary at first, because if your life belongs to you, then you cannot blame others forever, but it is also freeing. Because if your life belongs to you, then change is possible. Many people confuse responsibility with control. They think responsibility means controlling everything. This is impossible. You cannot control the world. You cannot control other people. You cannot control the past. But you can control one thing: your choices. Happiness is not built from perfect conditions. It is built from consistent choices, small ones, daily ones, often invisible. You don't become happy in one moment. You become happy by choosing alignment again and again, choosing honesty over comfort, choosing meaning over image, choosing growth over avoidance. Responsibility means you stop waiting. You stop waiting for motivation. You stop waiting for approval. You stop waiting for the right time. You act with what you have, where you are. This does not mean rushing. It means stopping self-deception. One of the biggest enemies of happiness is the belief that life will begin later, after success, after money, after healing, after certainty. But life does not wait. Life happens now. People who are unhappy often live in the future or the past. They regret, they imagine, they replay, but they are rarely present. Happiness lives in presence, not in perfection. Responsibility brings you back to the present moment. It asks, what can I do today? Not tomorrow, not someday. Today. Another important truth: happiness is not a constant state. Anyone who promises permanent happiness is lying. Happiness is a rhythm. It comes and goes. Peace is more important than pleasure. Stability is more important than excitement. A mature understanding of happiness accepts sadness, accepts fear, accepts uncertainty, not as enemies, but as part of being human. People who chase only positive emotions become fragile. They break when life gets difficult. People who accept the full range of emotions become resilient. They bend, but they don't collapse. Responsibility also means choosing how you interpret life. The same event can destroy one person and strengthen another. The difference is not the event, it is the meaning assigned to it. You cannot always choose what happens, but you can choose what it teaches you. This choice is powerful. Happiness grows when you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this asking from me?" This shift changes everything. Victimhood dissolves. Agency appears. You stop being dragged by life. You start walking with it. Another pillar of happiness is acceptance, not passive acceptance, not surrender, but clear-eyed acceptance. This is where I am. From here, movement becomes possible. Denial blocks growth. Acceptance opens doors. Many people are unhappy because they fight reality. They argue with what is. They waste energy wishing things were different. Acceptance saves energy, and energy is life. Responsibility also includes accepting limits. You are not infinite. You have limited time, limited energy, limited focus. Trying to be everything destroys happiness. Choosing what matters creates peace. A happy life is not full. It is intentional. It has empty space, rest, silence, room to breathe. Choice after choice, day after day, you shape your life. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly. And this brings us to the final truth. Happiness is not found. It is built. Built through attention, built through meaning, built through responsibility. Not once, but continuously. You will still have hard days. You will still doubt. You will still feel lost sometimes. This does not mean you failed. It means you are alive. A happy person is not someone without problems. It is someone who trusts themselves to face problems. Trust grows when words match actions, when you keep small promises to yourself, when you live honestly, even when no one is watching. This honesty creates inner alignment, and alignment creates peace. At the end of life, people rarely regret working too little. They regret living someone else's life. They regret ignoring their inner voice. They regret postponing meaning. Happiness is listening early, before life forces lessons. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be extraordinary. You need to be present, responsible, honest. A simple life with meaning is richer than a loud life without direction. So if there is one quiet conclusion to all of this, it is this: your happiness is not a destination. It is a way of living, and that way begins with one simple decision. I choose to live consciously. From that moment, everything slowly changes. Not outside first, inside. And when the inside changes, the outside always follows. That is the mission. And yes, it is possible. Quietly, gradually, humanly. And here is one simple practice that can quietly change your life. Every morning, when you wake up, before your phone, before the noise of the world, ask yourself one honest question. What will I choose today? Contentment and happiness, or dissatisfaction and suffering? This question is not about pretending that everything is perfect. It is about choice. You may not choose your circumstances. You may not choose what happens today, but you always choose how you meet the day. You choose whether to complain or to accept. You choose whether to resist reality or work with it. You choose whether to focus on what is missing or on what is already here. Happiness often begins not with changing life, but with changing interpretation. The same day can feel heavy or meaningful. The difference is not the day. The difference is the choice. When you choose contentment, you don't become passive. You become grounded. You stop wasting energy on resistance and use it for action. When you choose dissatisfaction, even good things feel empty. This is why happiness is a daily decision, not once, not forever, every morning. You don't need to force happiness. You don't need to deny pain. You only need to choose not to live in constant inner conflict. This small question builds responsibility. It brings you back to awareness. And awareness is the foundation of a happy life. And today, we didn't just talk about happiness. We practiced something deeper. We practiced listening, understanding, being present with words and meaning. This kind of English is not only about language, it is about thinking. When you understand the language, you understand ideas. When you understand ideas, you understand life a little better. Step by step, your English becomes clearer. And at the same time, your view of the world becomes clearer too. That is what we do here. We don't rush. We don't chase noise. We grow calmly in language, in mindset, and in life. I'm really glad you spent this time with me. It feels like a good conversation, the kind you remember after it ends. If this video helped you with your English, with your thoughts, or simply with your day, please support it with a like. Subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts in the comments. Your activity gives this space energy and gives us the feeling that we are growing together. Thank you for being here. Take care of your attention. Take care of yourself. And I'll see you again very soon, my friend.